Welcome to What's the Scenario with PLRB, where we explore claims and coverage scenarios relevant to insurance professionals. I'm Brennan McLaughlin.
I'm Mike Brode.
I'm Tim Havler. What is the scenario?
3 hamburgers from Burger Duke, hold the sauce. A pizza from Terry's and an order of wings from Big City Pizza. A single donut. This is the life of our delivery driver for the popular fast food delivery app, FastFeast. After a long day of drive-thrus, diners, and drives, our driver tosses their phone aside and heads home. On the way home, they get into a car accident and later file a claim with their insurer. A week later, the claim is denied because they never logged out of the app.
Ooh.
Yeah. All right, before we get into that, I've got a little bit of a trivia for you.
All right.
So do you know what a ghost kitchen is? This is not the trivia, but do you know what a ghost kitchen is?
No. Haunted?
Okay. This will be fun then. So a ghost kitchen is something that is a place that has no storefront. It only makes deliveries. These are things that popped up in the era of the food delivery apps. They started to have these ghost kitchens that had you couldn't walk in. They only exist on the app. And even some pre-existing places started to add ghost kitchen. So for example, if you order a pizza from this restaurant on a food delivery app, your food is likely being made in the kitchen of a Chuck E. Cheese.
Oh.
So you're on a food delivery service, you see this name, but your food's being made by Chuck E. Cheese. Charles de Camembert, Pasquale's Pizza and Wings, Showbiz Pizzeria Parlor, or The Restaurant. What do you think?
It's got to be, sorry, Tim, I'm jumping right ahead, but it's got to be Showtime or Showbiz, whatever.
I was thinking that. I did want to comment on Brennan. That was a good French accent there.
Yeah.
On the first one.
That's worthy of some Chuck E. Cheese tickets for you to turn in for valuable prizes.
Yes, something about Showbiz.
Yeah, it's got to be Showbiz.
Sounds like they're connected.
Well, I got you with my trick answer. / you heard some history there. Showbiz Pizza was kind of the original Chuck E. Cheese, allegedly a little bit higher quality if you kind of ask around. And then they got shut down and bought out by Chuck E. Cheese. But Pasquale's Pizza and Wings is the one to look out for if you're looking for some Chuck E. Cheese food, some Chuck E. Cheese pizza or wings while you're out on the apps.
Well, hang on, Brennan. Now, my children are much older now. You got little ones. If you go to Chuck E. Cheese, they have wings. I've never seen a Chuck E. Cheese with wings.
Well, maybe it's just a Pasquale's thing. Yeah, maybe they don't give that to the kids. Only if you go through the app.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. All right. So to get into the scenario, nowadays, many personal auto policies have rideshare exclusionary language, but let's go back in time a little bit, and many of these policies are still out there. One type of exclusion that often come into play is a livery or public conveyance exclusion, something like this kind of language. We do not provide liability coverage for any insured, for that insured's liability arising out of the ownership or operation of a vehicle while it's being used as a public or livery conveyance. So let's apply that to an accident that happens. You got a rideshare driver, Uber or Lyft, they're carrying passengers, you get into an accident. What do you think? Would that be excluded?
Well, that's probably the not trick question portion of this. I can't see a way around that one.
I got a question before we continue, though, Brendan. Is it livery or livery?
Oh, that's a great question.
Aha! Tim, what do you think? I always thought it was livery.
I always thought it was livery, but as a property guy, I've never actually heard anyone pronounce it.
There you go.
And then Brennan comes out with livery. I was ready to roll with it.
I'm fine. I'm just curious. Next episode we can talk about it.
Well, it's similar to etymologically, it's the same root as delivery. It comes from Latin. It comes through the French from the Latin to liberate. So, that's where you're giving one thing.
Livery and delivery.
Huh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, and we'll get into that. Don't worry. but we'll have to look up how it's pronounced correctly. I'll go with livery.
No?
So yes, I think you were getting to this, Tim. This is excluded. So we have a 2021 Florida case, for example. The court said, by its plain terms, livery exclusion does not look to the universe of all the ways the vehicle is used. It focuses on how the vehicle was being used when the insurance claim arose. And in that case, you had a rideshare. They were, moving passengers from one place to another. That makes sense. So let's get a little complication in there. How about if that same accident happened while the driver was logged in to the rideshare platform, awaiting an assignment, but not making a delivery? So that's still under this livery exclusion language.
Under that exclusion, though, you're not carrying anything yet because you haven't got anything to be delivered. So you're just on the clock, but nothing livery.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to that exclusion language. Operation of a vehicle while it is being used as a public or livery conveyance. Well,
come on, Tim.
I guess you don't have much else going on when you're just waiting for a ride. So you could say your intent at that point is the business or conveyance intent.
Well,
I'm confused. All right, what do you think, Brennan?
I think that's a valiant argument. We do have an article on this covering the same issue. It's just our attorney's opinion on it, but I think the idea is, hey, you look at that language the court used. Hey, what was the vehicle being used for when the claim arose? The article kind of goes into the use of while, and they decided, I don't think the exclusion would apply. That Florida case is looking at how it's being used while the accident occurred. There's no passengers in the car at that time. So, but you have to get into those granular factual questions. And like you're saying, like I think we're getting at, there's a factual question here.
Right. And the fun part that Tim covered is he could be a judge in a different state that comes up with a totally different conclusion. So that's the fun of case law. Who knows what judge is going to decide? It's always fun.
Well, yeah, and even like you said, Brennan, the factual issues. So if you're just put your phone on and you don't expect anyone for a while, so you're going shopping and then maybe you check in every 30 minutes to see if you got someone, that would be different, I think, than just being in a high traffic area, turning on your phone, knowing someone is coming soon and sitting there behind your wheel, just waiting for that person.
Yeah. Well, let me throw on another complication here.
Please.
So, both those cases were rideshare, right? Those situations I just gave you. But this scenario was about food delivery.
Right.
So let's go back to that word livery. Does it apply to property as well as passenger? Does that strike any recollection for either one of you?
Well, I don't have the auto policy right from, but didn't it say people or property for a fee? It didn't just talk about people, right? Or am I thinking of even an older policy back in the day when I handled these things?
You're thinking of a variation on the language, something that I've seen. So something that I think came about even before rideshare specific language. You do see those livery exclusions explicitly saying public or livery conveyance, and they'll specifically list property or passengers to get around this issue.
Right.
Because if you don't have that language, it's a little bit tricky. The majority of courts take the position that livery does encompass passengers and cargo, so no problem. But a minority of state courts held that the term was limited to passengers only. So as recently as 2019, a Missouri court upheld the application of the exclusion against a rural mail carrier because under Missouri law, the term public or livery conveyance was limited to carrying passengers for hire and not the transport of goods. So,
can it take even further back, Brennan, in the Wayback Machine? Because believe it or not, this used to come up with pizza delivery, right? So let's say Mike Brode, normally during the day, I'm VP of Meetings and Education at PLRB, but in the evenings, I deliver pizzas for some certain unnamed pizza place. They used to say 30 minutes or less or it's free. and you're driving around delivering pizzas, and the same thing came up. Now, and there it got all around not only the carrying of potentially property for a fee, but was it also your kind of like your main occupation, which would also be, maybe that's another podcast, maybe you're in there, I don't know, but I'll just throw it out there because it hasn't always been ride service and food delivery. There's been delivery services of other stuff that maybe somebody was doing on the side as well. So even before the gig economy was even thought of, people were delivering pizzas, and that might not be their full-time profession. Just saying.
All right. Yeah, that might be an interesting topic to look at. Actually, our next podcast is going to get into, hey, what's the primary purpose of your business? So
sweet.
Yeah. But I think we can see from kind of the livery example and also, looking into, hey, were they on the app or not? Before you have really specific policy language about rideshare apps, you can get into some pretty tricky issues that courts can go either way on, and it kind of gets into some granular factual things. So in that context, we can appreciate the value of the addition that ISO made to the policy. And here's an example of one of those exclusionary language. It says, we do not provide liability coverage for any insured for that insured's liability arising out of the ownership or operation of a motor vehicle while the motor vehicle is used by a transportation network company driver logged into the transportation network company's digital network, but is not engaged in a transportation network company prearranged trip, or while the driver provides a transportation network company prearranged trip. And ride sharing is often defined in these exclusions as something like transportation of persons or property in conjunction with a transportation network company. These transportation network companies being defined as, targeting these rideshare apps. So an entity uses a digital network to connect a rider to a driver for a prearranged ride or something like that. So they're defined with these in mind.
Could you help me there with one thing, Brennan?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Was it, so the wording of that ISO, it was an exclusion, right?
That's right. Well, I say exclusionary language because I believe it might be its own exclusion. It might just amend other
Delivery
prior parts
exclusion.
in the policy. So
okay.
It's referred to as exclusionary language because it might not, that's what it's doing, but it might take on a different form specifically depending on the policy.
And then what was excluded was anytime you're logged into the app. Is that the Mike Broad simple way of understanding it? So as long as you're logged in there, this language could apply.
Yep, that is the wording of this exclusionary language. But let's take an easier case to start. A driver who had their rideshare app open time of the loss didn't have any orders at the time they were fulfilling, but they had it open in the event that they might receive an order. Is that going to be excluded under this language?
Okay, yep, they were logged in?
Yep.
Okay, then yes.
That's easy,
agree.
right?
I concur, yes.
We've seen case law on that in Louisiana, Michigan, and Colorado. The text of exclusion is crystal clear. As long as you're logged into the app, this exclusion applies. And finally, I think we're circling around it back to this scenario. This scenario is based on a real case. This finally apparently came up. This user was logged in. They weren't waiting another assignment. They fully intended to be done for the day. We can even say the phone is on the ground, face down. Let's say it's on the passenger side where they hurled it away, totally done. You really think in practice, is the court going to exclude this?
Well, if the person could support all that wonderful stuff you're saying, maybe.
I would say normally, if the language is unambiguous, and as long as it's not a hugely unjust result, more often the court is going to go with the unambiguous language.
This court said the intent was irrelevant because she was logged in to the DoorDash platform at the time of the accident. So that just goes to kind of the power of really unambiguous policy language. It's kind of taken a journey from this really complex situation where you got to look at the definition of livery and dive into the facts of what the car was doing to, hey, this is a situation where the facts could get really complicated if you look at it. Where was the phone exactly? What was their intent? And clear policy language just made it crystal clear. Application.
And what would be interesting, and I don't think we're doing it in this episode, but to look at it from, because usually your service you're working for would provide some coverage while you're on the clock, so to speak. So I'd be curious, if you had that same fact scenario to the insurance company for the livery service, if they're saying, well, just because you were logged on, you had no intent of delivering anything for us or picking up passengers or whatnot. I wonder if they would try to say there was no coverage. Be interesting to see what would happen from the other perspective on this case.
Yeah, for
right.
sure.
Usually we don't want those gaps. It's nice when they dovetail perfectly, but we usually err on the side of overlapping so we don't have that gap.
And I think, and you can correct me, gentlemen, if we even know, but I think there's ways that you can even add an endorsement to your personal auto policy to say, hey, I do this stuff on the side, so I need a little bit of coverage in case a scenario like this happens, that, hey, neither side was claiming to be covered, so I better endorse something on there to protect me in case the rideshare company or the transportation network company doesn't pick up my liability coverage, right? If it's out there, they'll sell it.
It's my understanding that's even the purpose of this, because, personal auto policy is not really designed with rideshare in mind, and you'd actually want a policy that more matched the behaviors that you're engaging in. So
the risk that you were doing, yes, exactly. Brennan, yeah, excellent.
So, Brennan, what can we take away from this scenario?
So I've got a few takeaways here. So when you're applying older policy language to rideshare situations, you'll likely have to get into the facts of what occurred. Specifically, if you're dealing with a livery exclusion that doesn't explicitly apply to property as well as people, you'd better take a look at how your state defines that word livery. But if your policy has one of these modern rideshare exclusionary language added to it, many of those ambiguous situations might be resolved by the plain policy language. The only factual consideration may be whether the driver was logged into the app.
So, Mike, where can an adjuster go to learn more?
They can go to their livery transportation network. No, just teasing. Where can they can go to plrb.org. Check out all the cool stuff that we have. I think we have some emerging issues, case law review, all sorts of stuff on all this transportation stuff and whatnot. And Brendan, I'm sure you would be kind enough to share any link that we have to this kind of cool information in the show notes, right?
Absolutely. And there you'll also find a recap of the key points from this episode and links to our social media. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us. And please give us a call at 630-509-8704 and leave a voicemail to share your adjuster story. We'll see you next time.
Brennan, did you get my voicemail that I left you?
Oh.
With an anonymous voice?
Ooh. Well, I'll have to take a look for that. Wait, were you disguising your voice with one of those,
Maybe.
was it like a ransom situation?
No, nothing like that.
Scary. Okay.
It was like, those whistleblower testimony things where the people, kind of just.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So listen for that, or I might have called the wrong number and left somebody else a message, and they'll be really totally confused. So who knows?
All right. Well, we'll look out for that one.
All right.
All right.
Until next
time.
Everybody. Bye.
The views and opinions expressed in this resource are those of the individual speaker and not necessarily those of the Property and Liability Resource Bureau, its membership, or any organization with which the presenter is employed or affiliated. The information, ideas, and opinions are presented as information only and not as legal advice or offers of representation. Individual policy language and state laws vary, and listeners should rely on guidance from their companies